To do so full-on welcome to everybody. Thank you for showing up tonight, and we're looking forward to a really tremendous evening. As you know, it's the Gremlin Taming and Self-Mastery, and we're so lucky that we've got Rick here tonight. I've managed to track him down across the world, and he's really thankfully agreed to be with us tonight. But before we get to Rick, there's a couple of things I want to just go through in terms of tonight and a little bit about ourselves. So here we go. So about tonight's webinar. If you've worked with us before, or if you've come into our webinar series before, you'll know that this is something that we've done on a regular basis over the last several months. And again, we've got a great evening ahead over the next hour. The topics are always in the sphere of coaching and leadership development. And that is our area of passion, an area that we're really excited to operate. And we want to bring as much insight and awareness to a whole combination of people. And that's going to be coaches tonight, that's HR professionals, that's leaders in business, and across the board. So that's who we have on the call tonight. We've got a tremendous number. If you're not on our mailing list, please access that on the ways that you see on the screen there. That's through our website, wwacoaching.com, or through emailing our office and just mentioning that you want to be on future webinars. As part of this series, we're excited also that we have planned for our upcoming webinar, and this is going to be in September. We're still working on the dates, but we're hoping for the second week of September. And this is going to be with Anrod and Marita around creating intelligent teams. So I know there's a lot of coaches out there that will be very interested in that. And if you're an HR professional looking to work with leadership teams, then really it's something you don't want to miss. They've written a fantastic book, and these people are extremely experienced in the space of teams and coaching leadership teams. We have, a little bit about what we do at WWA. In fact, before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are the largest, most established coaching company in the Middle East, and we've been here since 2004. We are a specialist organization, so we are very much focused around coaching and delivering coaching solutions. We're lucky because we've got a huge number of associates that work with us, professional certified coaches, and our alignment is very much with the International Coach Federation in terms of the credentialing and also our ethical and standards of practice. In fact, tonight we've got a lot of ICF coaches with us from the region, and we're thankful that the ICF have supported this particular webinar, and I believe it was a really exciting connection with ICF for this evening. And of course, we work across the Middle East and North Africa as a region. One second, here we go. What do we do? The majority of what we do is around executive leadership performance coaching. We do an expanded amount of stuff with leadership teams, and hence the focus of our next webinar. We're also involved in culture, coaching culture journeys and the change management that goes around that, as well as working with developing internal coaching skills for leaders and managers by working with organizations internally and delivering those. And mentoring. Mentoring is a very exciting space that we've entered into a number of months ago, and already running some projects around the region in terms of setting up programs and running programs. So tonight's format is around three areas, three key sections that Rick is going to address. And these might change and morph as we go through the evening, because really it's going to be around, Rick and I are going to do a little bit of a dance here. And I'm hoping that I don't step on his toes too much, but part of that will be very much dealing with the time delay. Rick is calling in from Texas, and there is a little bit of a delay on the line, so we'll dance around that a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to be fine. we really want you to be engaged. This is, if you're expecting a whole host of slides, then be prepared for a new type of webinar. This is very much about engaging and really having experiential connection with Gremlin Taming and with Rick tonight. And we're drawing on his expertise, experience, and we want you to ask questions, bring in situations and issues from your own personal experience, your interpersonal challenges, and maybe even client issues as well. I know Rick is very keen for that to happen. And if you've got a question, put up your hand. You'll see on the box there's an option to put your hand up, and please go ahead and do that, or send us a chat or a question, and we'll do our best to deal with that as and when it comes up. So let me introduce Rick, if I may, and give you some sense of who Rick is. I have known Rick for over 12 years, but Rick has not known me. And the reason I can say that is that I was introduced to Rick through my own coaching journey, and this was very much about being engaged with the two books that you see here. Rick has had these books in constant circulation and for over 30 years, and these are printed in over 10 languages. So Rick is really been well, for me in my own coaching practice, been a source of some fantastic tools, which I quite frankly use daily in working with clients and myself and others, even my family. And also he's the founder of the Gremlin Taming Institute. And at this point, Rick, I don't want to say too much about you, because I know you've been in coaching for over 45 years, and that for me is quite frankly a lifetime. So at this point, I want to bring you in
Yes.
and hear your voice and enjoy what you're bringing for us tonight. So thank you for joining us, Rick.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for inviting me, Nick. Excuse me. I am absolutely, to put it mildly, honored to be here. The work that you do at WWA Corporate Coaching is, besides the fact it's superlative, it's important, and it's very unique in that not only do you train extraordinary coaches, but you ensure your corporate clients top-notch service by matching, as I understand it, your client's unique and timely needs with the coaches best suited to meeting those particular needs. So thank you. I'm honored to be included. And I also want to thank all of those of you who are participating in this webinar. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for joining us. If I may, let me just say to you that I want you to walk into your next session as a coach and leader, knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are a better coach and leader as a result of our time together. So please dive in. As we work together, I want you to keep in mind that absolutely any issue that you bring to the table, be it personal, interpersonal, client related, it's just dandy with me. Now, you don't have to feel pushed to do so, but feel free to do so. Or if you want to just listen, that's fine. If you want to simply ask questions, that's fine. Just keep in mind, it's through your real life challenges that I can most clearly, I think, illuminate the key elements and strategies of the Gremlin Taming method, which is a very, very powerful method. So feel free to dive in, and let's create a dynamic experience, and most importantly, an enjoyable experience. Let's make it a good time. So where would you like to begin, Nick?
Well, Rick, we're in your hands tonight, and I think where I would really love to start is
Okay.
a little bit about yourself and just where has Gremlin Taming come from? Give me an insight into what started this whole movement.
Well, I'll tell you, I wrote the book 30 years ago, and psychotherapists began to use it, and it started being used in teaching programs. And then when the coaching movement took hold, really, it started being used in a lot of coaches training programs, including the Coaches Training Institute, which used it extensively, and I'm really appreciative of that. So the amazing thing is that on its own, people in various countries, I know you mentioned that Taming Your Gremlin was in 10 languages. The interesting thing about that, Nick, is that that's not because my publisher, HarperCollins, is out pounding on doors saying, hey, translate Rick Carson's book, publisher in wherever it happens to be. I mean, Norway or all these different countries. It's because readers on the street actually chase down publishers in their countries, had those publishers contact my publisher. So, you know, Taming Your Gremlin has never been a blockbuster, but it's got a remarkable track record, having sold for 30 years and being in all these languages. So HarperCollins asked me to do a revised edition, which I did after 20 years, and then a few years after that, they asked me to do a sequel to Master Gremlin Taming. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, and for a lot of people who've been introduced to coaching, they find out that once they begin to learn the Gremlin Taming method, if they've just been introduced to it, sometimes they think they know it. And as you know, Gremlin now, it wasn't so when I wrote the book 30 years ago, but has become pretty much common parlance among coaches. So I hope that by the end of this call, people will have a pretty clear understanding of exactly how the method works. It's a unique method. So if you want me to, what I can do is just give a brief overview of the method and one of the key concepts and processes in the method. I think that's what we talked about. So I'll just do that if it's okay with you, Nick.
Please go ahead, Rick. That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, that's great. Well, for those of you listening, as a leader, a coach, your challenge is to tap into and channel the full potential, not just of yourself, but of course of those you serve. But it's not easy. It's not easy because there is a vile and vicious force working against you. And that force is what I call your gremlin. So keep in mind that your gremlin is the macabre master of misery that's lurking in the shadows of your very own mind. One thing I want to make clear is that your gremlin is not your negative thoughts, and your gremlin is not your traumatic past experiences. He's not your fears. He's not your regrets. He's not your self-limiting concepts. Your gremlin is the one who uses those things, and a lot more, actually, to create elaborate cinematic works, films suited to your unique vulnerabilities. And he is the one, that gremlin is the one who then seduces you into watching those films and in confusing them with the pure experience of your actual breath-to-breath existence. So your gremlin is your gremlin by virtue of his intention. And his intention is to make you miserable and to limit your exercise of your potential by consistently diverting your attention from the simple peace and contentment already within you. Untamed, your gremlin is going to destroy your health. He's going to foul up your relationships. He's going to dampen your creativity. He's going to hamper your productivity. He's going to send you into low-down funks, wind you up into fits of panic. One of the things that I emphatically stated in the revised edition of Taming Your Gremlin, and I want to restate it here, is gremlin taming has nothing to do with a Tom and Jerry cartoon in which, you know, one sees Tom or Jerry
Rick,
with
sorry,
the
if you could just repeat that last piece. We just missed about 30 seconds of what you've said.
one shoulder and a
Sorry, Rick, I
devil
think we've got a
and our
problem with
gremlin on the other. Gremlin taming is not about resolving that dialogue. It is about freeing from that dialogue your heart. It was sometimes not about an angel on the shoulder. It's about
So, Rick, I'm going to ask you if you could just repeat that last minute you've
yes.
just given us. I know it's probably a mouthful, but we just missed that. The sound did not work for us. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful.
I'd be happy to if I can remember what I just said. Yeah, no, I'll be happy to if I can remember what I just said. I know the essence of it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me now, Nick? Nick, can you hear me?
Yes, got you loud and clear.
Okay. Basically, what I was saying, okay, gremlin taming is not about resolving the dialogue between negative thinking, think of it as an angel, and or the devil or the gremlin, resolving the dialogue between that part of someone, yourself, and the other part, think of that as an angel, because I can guarantee you in that dialogue, even the angel will eventually become a gremlin. Gremlin taming is about removing yourself from that entire dialogue and tapping into the essence of who you really are on the inside. Now, there have been all sorts of names applied to that thing. Soul, spirit, prana, ray, chi, ki, God, the kingdom within. It doesn't matter what you call that thing on the inside. In one book, I called it The Essence of the Natural You. In another book, I called it Life. In the sequel to Taming Your Gremlin, I called it Your Heart of Hearts. But you can't circle it with a word because it existed before the word. Sometimes I just call it peace. But that feeling on the inside, that thing that is there, that feeling of peace is the one thing, the one human experience that does not have to be created. It requires nothing else. It's already in there. So the idea is to learn how to tap into it. Well, the primary tool for doing that, the quintessential skill for doing that, for quieting this vile monster of the mind that is out to divert you from that experience, and for beginning to get a sliver of light between who you really are and your ideas about who you are, is what's called simply noticing. Now, simply noticing has nothing to do with analyzing the past, predicting the future, or figuring out anything. Simply noticing has only to do with simply noticing. It has to do, Nick, with paying attention. So your primary tool for simply noticing is your awareness. Your awareness is like a spotlight. Now, hopefully, right now you've got that spotlight somehow focused on my words, but you could just as easily shine that spotlight of awareness on what is going on in your immediate surroundings or on what is going on within your body. You could even shine your spotlight of awareness into the past via memory or into the world of make-believe via fantasy. The good news is that you can use your awareness to simply notice your very own ideas.
Rick, I need you just
Your
to repeat about 20
concept
seconds of that.
about who you are and about how the world works.
Rick, are you there?
Keeping these concepts outside of
Rick, I've got a problem with the sound, so
your
I just
awareness
going to ask you if you
is one
can
of your
just, sorry, if you could go back
gremlin's most effective.
a minute and give us that over again.
Um, it's like a and that you've been to see your works.
Rick, are you there now? Rick, I seem to have lost you on the sound. I'm just wondering if you're there with
I
me
just
right now.
lost you now, Nick.
Okay, great. So I think we're back, which is good. So
I'm here and I'm talking to you.
yeah,
Oh, it
so
is good.
um,
So, can you hear me now?
yeah, loud and clear. And I know we're dancing with a little bit of delay here, but I'm going to ask if now we've got clarity again, if you could just give me about, a minute, just rewind about a minute.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just summarize what I was saying.
Perfect.
From the time, let's do this, Nick. Do you have that diagram that
Sure do.
I drew up for you guys? Like the color diagram of a heart.
On the screen now, Rick.
There you go. That's great. So let's do this. Think of that heart symbol, that proverbial Valentine symbol that's in the center there, as the essence of who you really are. That thing that I was referring to as your heart of hearts or your soul, and it doesn't matter what you call it. As I said, you cannot circle it with a word. It's been there for a long, long time. In fact, it's infinite. That infinite power came together with something finite, your body, which is going to rot eventually, to create the entity that answers to your name. What Gremlin Taming is all about is getting a
Sorry, Rick. We've just got a sound issue again. If you can just wait
sliver
for a moment, I think we've got to play a bit of catch up.
of light between that heart of hearts, which is the essence of who you really are, and red rep your concept beliefs. You are out the work.
Right, Rick, I think hopefully we're back in normal speed. Are you there with us, Rick?
Okay. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I've got you now. Sorry, I think what's happening is we get a little bit of a delay, and then we miss some of the bits you say. But I think we're catching the good stuff. So hopefully we're okay to move forward. Just if we have an issue, I'm going to let you know as best I can. So if you just give us some moments to bear with that. I'm sorry, everybody, about the challenges we've got on the sound, but I think we're still getting the quality that we were hoping for in terms of the information. So, Rick, I'm going to hand back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yes, just tell me if for some reason you can't hear me. All right. So what I'm saying to you is that heart of hearts is the essence of who you really are. And it really exists. It can be felt. It's within you, but it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice to begin to tap into that power. Now, that power can tell you what and who to go toward and what and who to get the hell away from. And it has been there from the time that you got pushed out onto the planet, but also from the time you got pushed out onto the planet, you have been bombarded with experiences. From those experiences, you formed all sorts of ideas, just as I did. You formed all sorts of ideas about who you are and about how the world works. And that is represented by that red ring around the heart. Okay? Those ideas, those beliefs. Well, any belief is really just an opinion that you develop loyalty to. But many times we don't know that we're shrouded by those opinions about ourselves. So, I would rather you have a positive belief about yourself than a negative one, but any self-concept regardless of how glorious it is faulty, and it's confining for one simple reason. You are not a concept. So, as I say, from the time you got pushed out onto the planet, you have been inundated with experiences. From those experiences, you formed ideas about how lovable you are, how likable you are, how attractive you are, how creative you are, how you stack up in relation to your peers, how successful you're going to be. And those concepts are so close to the natural you, so very close, that once they're in there, and they're in there pretty solidly for most people by the time they're 6, we begin to lead our lives through those concepts. Well, where simply noticing comes in is as you begin to bring an outdated concept into the light, as you start to simply notice it, and again, that doesn't mean analyze it, it doesn't mean dig around in the past. As you begin to notice a concept about who you are, if it no longer fits for you, it will begin to disappear. You don't have to analyze it, you don't have to fight with it, because there is deep within you that powerful force that I mentioned to you, which is the same force that taught you really how to walk and talk. You know, when you were a kid, before you knew anything about, let's take walking for example, about kinesiology or physiology, anything like that, you didn't know anything. But what you noticed, simply noticed, is that if you leaned too far to the left, you bumped your head. So in the Gremlin taming method, we really begin to use and exercise and that muscle of simply noticing. And when that muscle, when that ability to simply notice is in play, there is a natural correction that starts to occur. When you notice how you are interfering with yourself, there's a natural correction that starts to occur, again, in the same way that you learn to walk and talk, because what is kicked into play is what I call the Zen theory of change, which simply stated sounds something like this. I free myself not by trying to free myself. It won't work. It's never worked for anybody. I free myself by simply noticing how, not why, how I am imprisoning myself in the very moment in which I am imprisoning myself. So the process described in the Zen theory of change is, of course, as far as I'm concerned, it's a law of the universe and has been expressed lots of ways. I know Lao Tzu, many years ago, 2,500 years ago, well, he said it, actually, he said it this way, but the truth is, I'm sure he said it in Chinese, but what he said was simply notice the natural order of things, work with it rather than against it, for to try to change what is only sets up resistance. So simply noticing is a skill. It is not, and coaches, please listen to me, it is not a philosophy. It is a skill. It relies on learning to control one spotlight of awareness. It is the first step in the extraordinarily powerful method known as Gremlin taming. The benefits of simply noticing and the Zen theory of change are powerful. Powerful tools for cleansing the channel between the soul and the persona. The last thing I want to say, and then I'll hush and take questions, comments, whatever, is that yellow circle around that heart of hearts, based on those concepts, those opinions you have about who you are, you form another level, what the rest of us know as your personality or your act, your advertising. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I help people get their acts together. But the objective in Gremlin taming is to be able to get a sliver of light between who you really are, that heart of hearts, and your concepts about who you are and your act, your advertising. Because if what happens is you do not have an act that is consistent with your heart of hearts, a persona that is consistent with that, then when your act, your persona gets chipped away at, which it is going to, it's inevitable, it just gets the dickens kicked out of it from time to time, you will fight to preserve that act with the same fervor that you fight to preserve your life with. So what's all true is when you match your advertising, your persona, to that heart of hearts, which of course requires tapping into your heart of hearts, which requires gremlin taming, when you do that, you feel perfect, natural. Like, oh, I've had clients say to me, "Want to start tap into that thing?" Things like, "Oh, there you are," or "You've been there all along." It's so nice to feel you, you know. So there's a very distinct process. It begins with simply noticing. Can you hear me, Nick?
We certainly can, Rick. This is a
Okay.
good time for us
Well, let's see if
to
there.
cut into some questions, don't you think?
Sure, absolutely. Questions, comments, anything. Personal work.
Great. So what I would suggest, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and then what I'll do is I will be able to unmute you, and we look forward to you being able to ask your question live to Rick. In the meantime, let me just throw out a. Oh, hang on, I've got a question here. Let me go, David Rigby. I'm going to unmute you, and I look forward to hearing your question, David.
Hi, Rick. I appear to notice a great similarity between what you're talking about and mindfulness. Can you explain a bit about how they're different?
Absolutely. Well, the only difference, and it's not a big difference, is that simply noticing is really mindfulness in action. You know, in the last few years, with the neo-Buddhist movement becoming so popular, the term mindfulness is really being tossed around a whole lot. When I wrote Taming Your Gremlin 30 years ago, it wasn't nearly as popular a term, and the people were very into analysis. So I came up with the term simply noticing. But to me, simply noticing is mindfulness in action. It's actually how to take mindfulness and use it to focus on not only what's going on around you and what's going on in your own body, which is very important, but to begin to focus on, to simply notice your own thoughts and concepts in the very moment that they're playing through your mind. You know, so much of what I read about mindfulness has to do with all. I mean, the only difference, if there is one, and I think it's just a difference in emphasis, is in the gremlin timing method, we talk about how to use mindfulness to focus on what's going on in your head at any given moment. To notice, to catch yourself in the act of jabbing your own thumb in your own eye or building a wall for yourself. Really, there are a few things, 4 or 5, that come up really often. One is people scaring the hell out of themselves. Another is people putting themselves down. Another is people trapping themselves in concepts, beliefs, opinions about who they are. Another is miring oneself in regret. Another is clinging to resentment. Nothing wrong with anger. I'm all for it. If you're angry, be angry. But clinging to resentment is, those 5 things I just mentioned are all poison. And when you really start to notice in your body what each one feels like, you start noticing not only do they feel like poison, but every one of them feels slightly different. Every one of them will result in, firstly, shallow breathing. Secondly, tension in your neck and shoulders. And thirdly, tension in whatever the weakest area of your body is, tension and or discomfort. So simply noticing is a very powerful process. So as I said, I guess the simplest way to say it is that it's mindfulness in action. It's mindfulness used for personal growth, not just for a fuller, rich experience of this existence? That's a great question, by the way. I want to add one thing. The most insidious of those 5 things I mentioned is the one, I don't know what order I mentioned it, but it's the most insidious gremlin tool, which is trapping yourself into a concept of who you are and of how the world works, because it's very hypnotic. In a master class in gremlin taming, I call it a hypnotic pre-conviction. It's hard to spot because you're sort of in it, but that's the beauty of gremlin taming. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it. And if that was not clear to you, feel free to comment or ask for more.
David, thank you. I hope that answers your question. If not, then please raise your hand again and we can come back to you. In the meantime, I'm going to go Sharif. I believe you've got a question. I'm going to unmute you, and we'll look forward to hearing your question to Rick. Sharif, are you there? Sharif, you're live.
Sharif, are you there?
Yeah. Sharif, you're going to give us a question? Okay, maybe not. So if you are going to, if you want to ask a question, Sharif, then raise your hand again. I've got a question, Rick. For me, I just want to lean a little bit into, we're talking around coaches and coaches' skills a lot here, and that's fantastic. And I know that we're going to have some questions that lean into that. But what about people in, let's say, in office space, HR functions and leadership functions? Where does gremlin taming show up for them? Where do you think it's of most use for them?
Well, I think it's the essence of being a good leader. Now, as a leader, your challenge is to tap into and channel not only your full potential, but to help those you serve do the same. That's what a leader does. And it's not easy because of that monster of the mind that we're referring to. So ultimately, every personal growth experience, I mean, people come to coaches for various reasons. You know, they maybe are having trouble with their particular department, or they, you know, want to switch jobs, or they're having difficulty with an employee, or a direct report, or a family problem, whatever it happens to be. I can tell you, if you really work with them on the deepest level, what you're going to discover is what they really want is to feel at peace on the inside and to tap into their full potential. Well, that's exactly what the gremlin taming method is all about. That's how it works. It just begins with simply noticing. But the beautiful thing is, if you simply notice how you're getting in your own way and even accentuate it, you know, I said something earlier about jabbing your own thumb in your own eye. As you begin to notice precisely how you're doing that, that kicks into play that Zen theory of change I mentioned earlier. And it always works. I mean, it's there's a lot of stuff, Nick, that I'm not confident about, but I'm 100% confident about this method. I mean, I have seen it do miraculous things. As people really own how they're getting in their own way, in the moment that they're getting in their own way, as they see it. It's the difference between insight, which is worth about a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10, and awareness, which is worth a 10. When you catch yourself in the act of either causing yourself misery or getting in your own way or just contributing to that happening, sometimes it starts with an external circumstance. But if you notice how you're getting in your own way, then if that way is no longer working for you, it may have made perfect sense when you adopted it. But if you notice it's no longer working for you, it will begin to get sanded down. It can evaporate in many cases. It certainly lessens. So that's the way the process works. So I'm actually saying to you, Nick, any challenge of leadership or any challenge of coaching, ultimately is going to get down to gremlin taming. People present with a situation most often. Well, pretty quickly, you're going to take that situation down to them and one other person. That's what I suggest. And then you're going to eventually, sometimes this happens in one session, you're going to know already. So what I'm about to tell you, which is that you want to take that interpersonal conflict, and you can work through it. It's fine to spend a lot of time there. But you want to remember that that interpersonal conflict between your client and their direct report or their spouse or whoever it happens to be is representative of their own intrapsychic duality. It's a conflict between them and them as well. And so eventually, I don't care what the situation is, eventually you're going to get down to that. The biggest mistake I see coaches make, biggest mistake, and is trying to tug people to get from where they are to another place, as opposed to simply accentuating where they are. In other words, if somebody is sitting in a chair and they want to go from that chair to a couch, and I tug on them and pick them up and plop them down on the couch, their next words to me are going to be something like, now what? But if what I say to them, they say to me, I want to get over on that couch, and I say to them, I want you to notice that your butt is on that chair. And I want you to say to me, my butt is on that chair. And then I'll say, I want you to say to me, my butt is on this chair, and I want to get over to that couch. And I will have them repeat both of those statements very slowly and feel each one. Feel each one. I'm sitting here, my butt is on this chair, and not but. I want, I'll say that again, I want, say it again, I want to be on that couch. So all I'm doing is accentuating the obvious and helping that client get to the point of choice. Now that's a rather mundane, simple example, but that's one of the beautiful things about gremlin taming. It is simple, but it is not easy, and you will not take a client further than you've been with it. So when I train people, I train them by working with them on the method for the first year or two, them using it in their own lives. And if people don't do that, they don't learn the method, really. So I'm aware of sounding sort of hardcore here, humorless actually, but I'm not feeling that way. So anyway, any other questions?
Good, Rick. I have a question. I think you might have just done this, but Priyanka has just sort of said, is there any way we can do a quick demo on how to work with a client on simply noticing? Now, you've probably just done that, but I wonder if there's anything else you want to add to that in terms of, you know, how you would expand on that simply noticing.
Well, yeah, there are lots of ways. For instance, for those of you that are listening on the call, if you find yourself, for example, shrinking from a challenge, you know, or from a conflict. Some people are conflict avoidant, and you find yourself wanting to run away or cower in a corner. Well, probably if the person you're in conflict with is right there, you're not going to do that. But as you do this, but at some point, you might picture yourself or actually do this, cowering in a corner or crawling away with your, as if you had your tail between your legs and you were scared. Or you can take how you're scaring yourself and accentuate it, create a real horror movie. You know, let's imagine, for example, that your employer looks at you with a frown on her face, and you find it yourself in your head starting to imagine, uh-oh, she doesn't like me. In fact, she may fire me. I would have you accentuate that in two ways. One would just be the thoughts. You know, oh my God, she doesn't like me. She's really never liked me. She's probably gonna fire me, and then my reputation is going to be completely ruined, and I won't be able to find another job. My spouse is going to leave me. I'm going to end up in an alley, and I'm going to get eaten by rats or whatever. So you accentuate the thoughts, but as you accentuate the thoughts, you also accentuate the physical feeling in your body as you're doing that to yourself. As you become aware, as I said earlier, of jabbing your own thumb in your own eye, and this is the key, in the moment that you're jabbing your own thumb in your own eye, there's a natural, I keep saying this, a natural correction that starts to occur. And that is a key tenet of the Gremlin taming method. And as I said earlier, it's a law of the universe as far as I'm concerned. So there are several options to play with, which are outlined in the books, but one of the options is just what we call accenting or accentuating the obvious. So I meant what I said earlier. You don't want to try to pull your client from one chair to another. What you want to do is accentuate to the client, with the client, how they are contributing to their own misery. And when clients begin to catch on to the method, they can help you. You want them to work with you as a team member. It's not something you do to them sort of sneakily. You can explain to them the method. They can read the book. You can even tell them exactly how it works. And then they'll help you exaggerate how they're getting in their own way, whether it's a horror movie, like the example I just gave you, or whether it is miring themselves in regret. Nothing wrong with regret, but if you mire yourself in it and you stay with it, you're going to end up with what we all know as guilt, which occurs sort of in the upper part of your chest, upper part of your abdomen, actually. Maybe somebody, as I said, is simply clinging to resentment or trapping themselves in a concept. Regardless of how they're getting in their own way, what you want to do is in almost a theatrical way, an enjoyable way, a playful way, is accentuate that with them. Have some fun with it. When people start to see the absurdity of how they're getting in their own way, again, there's a natural correction that occurs. But if you want to, and again, this is another mistake I see coaches making sometimes, is they jump too quickly to the second step, which is to play with options, which is to talk about ways to change. Before talking about ways to change, really accentuate where they are, how they're keeping themselves where they are, and to get them to play with you as you do that. It's a lot of fun. Does that help, Nick?
Yes, it does, Rick. Thank you. And I've got another question for you now. I've got one of the individuals, Mahnez, is saying, one of my clients wants to know how to deal with conflict at work. How do I handle that? Now, that might be a bit wide, but we can tighten it a little bit more if you need.
No, it's not too wide. In fact, it brings us to something that I actually was thinking we might get to, having to do with creating rewarding relationships. First of all, I want to talk about the process. And I know we don't have much time, Nick, but I think we can get this done on time. And I'd suggest people write this down. Your intention, write down the word intention, has to be, if you want to work through a conflict effectively, your intention has to be to connect. That's the second word. Intention is to connect. And what that means is you bring your spotlight of awareness completely into the present moment with that other person. You know, at any point in time, including right now, you are a devotee of something. And you devote via your spotlight of awareness. So your intention in working through a conflict is to fully connect. And you're going to connect with respect. Now that's a tricky one, and that's the third word. Because you may or may not respect the person you're in conflict with. You may not respect them. But what you damn sure are going to respect, certainly I respect it for me, is that the time I am spending with that person, those are precious breaths worth of my life, and I'm not going to get them back. So if I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there 100%. I actually developed this as a checklist for myself and regarding my practice. I developed it about 15 years ago, And before long, I was applying it to every personal relationship I had, interpersonal with people. And then I started applying it to everything, to writing books, to the whole deal. So your intention is to connect with respect, which makes it logical to say what is the very best, this is the next word, environment for forming that connection. If I want to do a performance review with somebody, do I really want to do that over lunch? If I want to have a conversation with my wife about whatever, something heavy duty, do I really want to do that with the television on? Your environment is everything from your heart of hearts out. So if your intention is to connect with respect and you attend to the environment, then your next job is to be completely authentic. And what that means is matching your voice and facial expression to what you're feeling on the inside. Now, if with regard to anger and conflict, if you've let that build, it can come out in a rageful way. But if what you're doing is staying current with your feelings, staying current with what's going on, it may be firm. It may be something like, I don't like what you just did. I resent it, and I don't want you to do it again. Maybe it's that clear. So your intention, first word, is to connect. Second word, with respect for the fact this is your life unfolding here. You're going to attend to the environment in which you're forming that connection. You're going to say, what's the very best environment to do this? And you're going to be authentic. Well, the next word is trust. That doesn't mean trust the other person. It means trust that if your intention is to connect with respect, you take care with the environment so that you can form the best connection possible. You're authentic. If you'll trust that, the last word is actually, it's an E, begins with an E, and you can use either energy or experience. Think in terms of experience. Your energy will flow freely, and you will have a nice experience. So it's an acronym, and the acronym is I create. You're creating an experience. Okay. Boy, that's a 3-day workshop that we just did in about 3 minutes. So I hope it made some sense to people.
For sure.
Any questions about it, Nick, or anybody else?
No, I think that's great. Thank you for saying write it down, because I've just done that myself, and it's something I'm going to revisit. And I love that idea of intention, because that's a real core focus to set that up. And that's a big.
And there's a difference between intent. Let me say this: there's a difference between intention and desire. I'm not talking about a goal, long-range goal when I say intention. I'm talking about your intention is to connect. Because in any moment, you're always a devotee. Right now, I'm devoted to imparting some information. That's what I'm doing with my life. So I'm giving it my very best shot. Well, you want to give everything your very best shot. It's like I'm going to show up as completely as I can. The environment is not perfect here, Nick, as you well know, because of the delay and the sound problems. But given the environment, we're doing the best we can do. But if I had my way and you had your way, we would all be in the same room right now, right? And that would be an ideal environment. I want to mention that a master class in Gremlin Taming, the entire book, which is the sequel to Taming Your Gremlin, is devoted to creating rewarding relationships. So if people are interested, they can, of course, order that, not through me, but through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or some bookstore. So.
Great, Rick. I'm aware of time here. I've got maybe this is going to be our last question. Benan, I'm wondering if I can get you live. I'm going to give it a go. If not, I've got your question written down here. Let me just see if I can get you live. Benan, am I going to get you? Or are you... Benan.
Hey, hi.
Great. Go, Benan.
Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you so much. This is wonderful. And my question is, as you have been talking about taking your client in the experience and exaggerating the process of staying with the, you know, the whole crawling to the corner and your tail behind you. Have you ever experienced that
Yeah.
a client might be resisting? You know, actually, the first question is that kind of the whole noticing the negative and you know, resisting it, is that the heart you've been referring to? The natural resistance to that negative feeling, the pushback. So that's the first question.
Yeah.
The second question is, have you ever experienced that a client actually says that, you know, I want to stay with this, you know, I don't know. I want that,
Yes.
I do not want that natural correction.
Absolutely. And here's what I do with that. I want to be sure you can hear me, because I think it's a great question. Of course. But what I'm going to do is accentuate that. So if somebody says to me, whatever, you know, that feels really awkward, and it's scary to me, or whatever, I'm probably going to say, look me squarely in the eye and say no. So they'll look me squarely in the eye and say no. The way to exaggerate that, because I'm not going to make anybody do anything. I may say something like, okay, let's experiment for a minute. I'm going to say you will, and you're going to say nothing other than I won't. And we'll start just playing with that, okay? And sure enough, if a client should say to me, I don't want to do that, I'll say, well, that's okay. It's your choice. I've had clients, if a client says to me, I want to stay right where I am, that's fine. My job is not to change anybody. My job is to get them to choice. That's all. So I might say something as simple as, what's your objection? They may say, it feels silly to me. And I may say, you know, tell me again, I'm not silly. They'll say, I'm not silly. So, okay, tell me again, I'm not silly. I might say, what's your objection to being silly? I don't know what it might be. You know, you're supposed to be serious as a professional. Okay, well, show me your serious face. And now show me your silly face. And they may say, well, that seems ridiculous. And I say, well, there's no such thing as that. Tell me, Rick, you're ridiculous. They say, Rick, you're ridiculous. So they're beginning to learn something about authenticity and about the world they're creating, the reality they're creating. All I'm doing is being me. I'm just asking them to do something. I don't mind taking no for an answer, but I'm not going to not ask. So don't be afraid to ask, I guess is what I'm saying to you, unless you're taking to a client to a level that's deeper than you've been. If you find that you're asking somebody to do something that you wouldn't do, then you're probably barking up the wrong tree. That's one of the reasons it's important to practice this method yourself in your own life. I really recommend that for all of you, is that you start fooling with it if you haven't already. That was a great question. Thank you. I hope my answer was satisfactory for you.
Thank you, Rick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one more question. Rima just asked a question, and I want to plant that out there and have this as our last question. I'm sorry for those that weren't able to fit them in, but and the question is, Rick, how does process coaching help release gremlins?
Who's asking this question?
Rima.
I know you are, Nick, but are you asking it for Riva?
Rima.
Okay. Rima. Okay. Well, Gremlin taming is, I guess, what you would call process coaching. It's the ultimate process coaching, because what you're doing is taking the process that someone is using to create their own reality and accentuating it. It doesn't mean the reality they're creating is wrong. It just, you want to put people in touch with what they are creating, because much of what they're creating is produced by a veil of concepts that they're wearing, and many of those concepts are from the past. So your idea is to have people view that veil of concepts. That's the process, and works beautifully.
Thank you.
Gremlin taming does deal with the process. That's, again, it's not a philosophy. It's not an intellectual process. One of the things that's happened as the term gremlin has become common parlance among coaches and psychotherapists is a lot of people teach it as, oh, it's that negative thinking. You know, that I meant what I said earlier is the tip of the iceberg. You take somebody from negative thinking to positive thinking, that positive thinking may be better than the negative thinking, but a new concept, different trappings, same damn trap, same trap. The idea is to remove yourself from that entire dialogue by tapping into, and I think this is something else Rima was asking about, as you begin to notice those concepts and those habitual behaviors, which we didn't get into, you are indeed in touch with the observer within, your heart of hearts, your soul, the natural you. And before long, you can take your awareness away from those concepts and begin to drop it to that heart of hearts. And I'll hush in just a minute, Nick, but as you do that, that feeling that of who you really are begins to expand. It's a little like breathing on a flame. And before long, you start to notice, oh, wow, there you are. It's already there. It doesn't have to be created. So when you become observant, when you're really observing, you're observing from a place of your heart of hearts.
Rick, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I want to say a deep thank you to you for joining us tonight here in the Middle East. Really appreciate your insight, appreciate your experience and your wisdom. And I'm sure on behalf, and certainly I've had many thank yous on the messages tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Thank you so much.
Well, I want you to know, again, how very much I appreciate you inviting me. I'm honored. I think the work that you're doing is fantastic. I hope people will forgive us the technical glitches, but thank you. And thanks to all of you who hung with us in here. You know, I enjoyed my time. So thanks, Nick.
Pleasure. Thank you. And
thanks,
everybody.
Adrian.
And anybody that wishes to have more information, please visit Rick's website. And on the website, there's some great resources. Please be aware of that. And tamingyourgremlin.com. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. So thank you all, and good night.